I have this table of instance data about trees in a CSV file, and I want to create metadata for it so that others can automatically turn my CSV data into RDF. To create my metadata file, I'll first save a copy of my instance data to act as a starting point for my metadata file. Then I'll add a special metadata column on the left, and I'll mark the first cell with this magic string to indicate that this is a metadata file. And I'll add a few rows to work with here where I'll insert some metadata. I'll specify the data types of the columns. The first 4 data columns have a string data type, but the last one is a date. So for that one I'll also specify a date format. At the moment this file contains both metadata in pale yellow and instance data in white. The embedded instance data will now act as sample data for testing my metadata file. I'll test my metadata right away by running it through a processor. By default, the processor uses the metadata to generate RDF for the embedded instance data. And it looks like it generated 20 RDF triples. But I can also run it on a separate instance data file, in which case the instance data that's embedded in the metadata file will be ignored. To demonstrate this, I'll go back to my original instance data file and add another row of data. Then I'll run the processor again, this time specifying the instance data file separate from the metadata file. I now get 25 RDF triples. Now let's go back to the metadata file and add more column metadata. We'll specify a DC description for each column, and I'll also add metadata to name each column for further control of the RDF output. I can also specify table metadata. I'll specify which column acts as a primary key, and I'll specify the DC license for the table as a whole. Finally, to make this metadata file explicitly reference its associated instance data file, I'll specify the name of the instance data file, treeops.csv. That's it. I can just save this and I'm all done. What I like about this approach is the convenience. The data spreadsheet becomes a template for my metadata. I don't have to retype the column headers in the metadata, and I don't have to quote everything like I do in JSON. I can also see my sample data right with the metadata to coordinate them. And I can test with a single file using the embed sample data, and the sample data never gets separated from the metadata. Thanks for listening, and let me know your comments.